In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is...
My stepmother framed me for theft and called the police, but 3 years later life gave her a devastating lesson that changed everything. Let me start by giving you a little background on my situation. I'm 22, and I graduated from university about a month ago. Since then, I've been living with my father and my stepmother, although this is only a temporary arrangement. My father fully understands that I have no intention of staying in the long term, as the relationship with my stepmother, Veronica, is not a pleasant one. The feeling is mutual. She doesn't like me either, so she's not exactly sad about my dislike of her. My biological mother died when I was 9. When I turned 17, my father started a relationship with Veronica, and by the time I was 20, they were married. From the beginning, she showed a clear dislike towards me. I never understood what kind of adult person in their 30s decides to adopt a hostile attitude towards a teenager for no apparent reason, but that was the case with Veronica. Despite being considerably older than me, and without really having any valid reason to despise me, she maintained a rather strange attitude towards me from the beginning. Perhaps she saw me as competition for my father's attention, or something similar. As for me, I didn't feel any immediate antipathy. In fact, I tried to establish a cordial relationship with her, but when I noticed that she wasn't interested at all, I chose to simply ignore her. We shared a house until I went to university, and it wasn't a pleasant experience, as she was constantly looking for ways to make me uncomfortable. As you might expect, I wasn't particularly excited about coming back to live here, but until I find a job and can afford to rent my own place, it's my only option. I had resigned myself to it, but Veronica doesn't want me to stay here even temporarily. During my time at university, I would come home during vacations or some weekends, but only for short periods. At that time, her behavior was tolerable because I knew I would soon be returning to university, and it wasn't worth causing conflict. But now my stay is not so brief, and apparently everything I do bothers her because, according to her, I interrupt her peace of mind or something like that. Her way of expressing her discontent is by making my life impossible, demonstrating her great maturity and adult behavior. We have had constant arguments when my father is not present, but as soon as he comes home, she pretends that everything is perfectly fine, as if nothing had happened. I know that telling my father about this would be useless. He would probably think I was exaggerating, as he knows a completely different version of my stepmother. I also don't want to be petty, or give her the satisfaction of showing that her behavior affects me, because I know that's precisely what she's looking for. However, her recent action goes far beyond a simple argument, so I can't just ignore it. That's why I decided to press charges against her, and now my father claims that I was the one who provoked her and that my reaction is completely disproportionate. This is what happened. 5 days ago, we had an argument about something completely trivial, as is often the case with her. My father was at work, and I was busy sending job applications online in the morning. While I was completing one of these applications, Veronica stormed into my room and started yelling at me about the amount of dirty laundry I had piled up, claiming that it was preventing her from using the washing machine. She also needed to do her laundry, and apparently mine was getting in the way. I usually do my laundry about twice a week. I don't see how that can be a problem. But as she needed to use the washing machine, even if it was only to wash a couple of items, that was enough to start an argument, which she took advantage of to make a fuss. She told me that this was her house, and that I couldn't behave like that with her. I replied that in reality, the house belonged to my father, and that she hadn't done anything in her whole life to deserve to live there, apart from finding a man and marrying him so she could stay at home doing nothing. She was being malicious, and I simply responded in the same way. The argument escalated considerably. After a while, she left, and I thought the matter was over. But that night, after my father returned home, Veronica started shouting that one of her newly acquired designer handbags, valued at $1,500, had disappeared, and she began to accuse me of stealing it. She told my father that, as I still didn't have a job, she was pretty sure I was responsible. Instead of defending me, for some inexplicable reason, my father took her side and said that if I really hadn't taken anything, then I should talk to her instead of getting defensive. After a few minutes of shouting at each other, she simply decided to call the police. It was the most humiliating experience of my entire life. They searched the whole house, including my room and my belongings. leaving everything in complete disarray. But they found absolutely nothing. In the end, the handbag was reported stolen, but they let me go because I obviously didn't have it in my possession and there was no incriminating evidence against me. That night, feeling deeply humiliated, I decided to leave. Since then, I've been staying at a friend's house. I haven't spoken to my father, and he didn't try to stop me when I left either, which made it perfectly clear to me who he really cares about and who he doesn't. However, 2 days ago, he called me in tears and confessed that Veronica had admitted the truth. It turned out that she had taken the bag and left it at a friend's house a few days ago with the specific intention of incriminating me. She revealed the truth to my father after he caught her talking to that friend on the phone. He heard her say how happy she was that I had finally left. He told me he was deeply sorry and that at that moment he was not in communication with Veronica. He wanted to make it up to me by inviting me to come home and apologizing in person. I replied that the only way I would return home would be if she no longer lived there, something that I consider completely logical after what she did. That is to say, after what she did to her own daughter, the least I would expect is that. I also informed him that, now that I knew the truth, I was going to report her and press charges against her for this matter. I was really furious. But he tried to calm me down and asked me not to, arguing that we could resolve this whole conflict in private, that pressing charges against her would only make the situation worse to an irreversible point. He wanted us to maintain a good relationship, but I had not the slightest interest in that. Then he started begging me not to, saying that she had only confessed to put an end to our dispute and get me to come back. The irony is that she didn't keep it private when she called the police, so I don't see any reason why I should. So I'm going to press charges anyway. What's more, she did all that just to get me out of the house, and my father refuses to acknowledge it or just doesn't care. There is something really worrying about that woman, and if my father can't see it, and still hopes that at some point we will get along and resolve this problem, then there is something equally worrying about him. The only reason I have doubts is because the friend I am staying with told me that if I go down this road, I will practically be giving up any possibility of reconciliation with my father in the future. It's clear that he loves Veronica for some reason, and if I press charges against her, he will probably never be able to forgive me and I will lose him for good. She also reminded me that my father made many sacrifices for me in the past. After my mother died, he practically raised me alone, without the support of any other family member. No one was willing to help us, either financially or emotionally. He had to make a lot of sacrifices, and my friend just wanted me to think about that before making a final decision. That's why I'm a bit undecided about what I want to do. Although I am convinced that pressing charges against Veronica is completely justifiable, what worries me is my relationship with my father. Do you think I should show consideration for having raised me, or is this situation reason enough to break off our relationship? Addition. As many people have asked me, I didn't mention it because I didn't think it was relevant, but my father is about 48 years old and Veronica is 37. They have an 11-year age difference. Veronica used to work when she met my father, but she stopped after she married him. That's why I made that comment about her in my post. I don't think I said anything wrong because I know exactly what kind of woman she is. Even if my father can't see it, I see it clearly. If I had known that she would become like this after marriage, I would have warned my father from the beginning. Although it probably wouldn't have helped, because if my father doesn't recognize that what she did is wrong, then nothing will. Update 1. I have decided to go ahead and press charges against Veronica. Regardless of the relationship I have with my father, I cannot allow that to interfere with what must be done. I respect him, I love him, and I admire everything he has done for me, but that does not mean that I am going to allow Veronica to go unpunished. And if he considers this to be a minor problem, then it will show me that our relationship is irreparably damaged. I honestly think he should have anticipated this reaction because he was the one who called me and revealed the truth. If he didn't want me to take legal action against her, then he shouldn't have told me anything. I think that's exactly why he didn't want me to press charges, because he knows he was the one who told me and he would feel tremendously guilty if it all ended badly for her. But at this point, it's too late. Things are definitely going to go wrong for Veronica, and I'm not going to let this situation pass me by. I've already spoken to some friends who have put me in touch with a good lawyer. It will cost me money, but I think it will be worth it. I have some savings that my mother left me. I didn't want to use them because I considered them my reserve for emergencies or unforeseen situations. But at the moment, I'm already in negotiations with a company, and if everything goes well, I'll start work next month. The salary is good, and I think this is worth the risk. It's time Veronica receives some kind of correction. She can't go on through life without facing consequences for her actions. So I'm going to sue her, and if I win, she'll have to pay for the damages caused. Or she can choose to resolve this matter out of court, an alternative that I am also willing to consider. But what I really want is for her to understand that she has lost. Perhaps many people will think that this is petty and vindictive, but honestly, I don't care. This is important to me, and I am going to move forward no matter what anyone else says. Update 2. Well, during the last 2 weeks, I have not been in touch with my father. He tried to contact me on several occasions, but I did not reply because I knew I was acting against his wishes. I did not want to argue with him, and I was aware that if we spoke, he would try to convince me not to continue with this. So I simply said nothing. I continued with the legal procedures, spoke to the lawyer, made all the necessary preparations, and 2 days ago, Veronica finally received the official notification. That same afternoon, my father started messaging me again. Over the last few days, he had chosen to remain silent, probably because I wasn't responding or willing to talk to him. But once Veronica was notified, that stopped mattering. He expressed his deep disappointment to me, stating that this was not the way he wanted me to handle the situation, and that it was crazy that I was not even considering his point of view. He said that this was not the way he had raised me. In response, I finally replied. I told him that he had done an excellent job raising me, but that now it was my decision whether I wanted to approach this issue with resentment or forgiveness. And I chose not to forgive Veronica for the simple reason that she hadn't even shown any remorse. How could I even consider forgiving someone who didn't even apologize for their actions? It didn't make any sense. So I had to take another path, and I don't regret it either. Because, based on how he raised me, he also taught me not to allow anyone to disrespect me. Therefore, he cannot be upset because I am acting exactly as he taught me to act. I can't behave according to his convenience, and he needs to understand that. I am his daughter, and I am extremely grateful for everything he has done for me, but at the end of the day, I am also an independent individual, and he has to respect that. Besides, if he really believes that I can forgive Veronica after what she did, then he is completely wrong. She doesn't deserve my forgiveness, nor did she even ask for it. Over the last few weeks, she had numerous opportunities to apologize. And although I'm sure she knew I was considering suing her, she didn't even try to do it, not even to save herself. And I don't understand why he's upset, because if he really wanted everything to be resolved peacefully, without lawyers, then he could have talked to her too. That's what should have happened. I need him to understand that. So I wrote to him explaining all this. And what was his response? Complete silence. I guess he just had no arguments to defend himself with, because everything I said was absolutely true and he knows it. It would be absurd if he didn't recognize it. For now, the lawsuit will continue, and it will be up to Veronica whether she wants this to go to trial or prefers to settle out of court. But either way, she will have to face the consequences. And not only do I have a civil lawsuit against her, but I have also filed criminal charges for making a false report. According to my lawyer, I will probably end up with a criminal record for this, which won't significantly alter her life, considering she doesn't work, but it's the right thing to do at this point. Update 3. I'm really sorry I haven't provided any updates for so long, but I got a job and I don't have as much free time as I used to. I also moved in the meantime, as I got my own apartment, so I've been quite busy. Anyway, I know you're probably reading this because you want to know what happened between my father, Veronica, and me. Indeed, I went ahead with the lawsuit, but within days she got a lawyer and expressed a desire to reach an out-of-court settlement. Now, as much as I would have loved to prolong this process and make it a big hassle for my father and Veronica, I also had my financial limitations. So if she was offering me a quick solution, I was willing to accept it. In short, I obtained $15,000 from this agreement, which represents 10 times the value of the bag. In addition, Veronica had to perform community service because, after all, even though we reached an agreement, she had still filed a false police report. Fortunately for her, as it was her first and only offense, the penalty was not more severe. The positive thing is that she will now have a record for this, as a false report is a very serious matter. I am pretty sure that both the lawyer's fees and the financial compensation came out of my father's pocket. There is no way she could have that kind of money. Even the bag in question was a birthday present from my father. But at least I got something out of this situation, and that was my main goal. Unfortunately, since all this happened, my father and I have not spoken again. I have not blocked him, nor has he blocked me. We can communicate if we wish, but neither of us simply wants to. The last message I sent him was the one I mentioned in my previous update, where I questioned his behavior. He had no defense for what I said, so he simply never responded. And to this day, he still hasn't. I don't have much more to add on the matter. It's a strange piece, but sometimes I deeply miss my father. Even after he married Veronica and I left for university, we kept in regular contact, and he has been a fundamental part of my life for so long that it is strange to accept that things will never go back to the way they were. But in this situation, each of us feels that we have taken the right position, and at least I know that I am not going to change my mind, even if it means that my relationship with my father is permanently damaged. Update 4. It has officially been a year since I last spoke to my father. I have no idea what he has been doing. The only time I hear from him is when I attend family gatherings. He doesn't even participate in these gatherings, so I haven't seen him in a very long time. I'm not surprised that he has distanced himself from all the other members of the family, because he was never really close to anyone from the beginning. From what I can gather, he and Veronica are still together and are now considering adoption. I found out about this a week ago at a cousin's wedding, and I was really surprised. I had no idea that my father wanted to have another child. It's not that I'm opposed to having a sibling, but I'm just amazed by this decision. I guess it makes sense. They want to move on with their lives. But at some point, I think I just expected my father to choose me, his daughter, over Veronica. On the other hand, as unpleasant as it may sound, I sincerely hope they don't manage to adopt anyone. Veronica is not fit to be a mother, and I don't even understand how my father accepted the idea of adopting a child with her, of all people, especially after what she did to me. I can't imagine the kind of example Veronica will set for that child. I think he's already at a disadvantage before he's even been adopted. It's not that I wish my father ill, I'm just being realistic. Sooner or later, he will realize how empty his relationship with Veronica is and what a huge mistake he has made. And by the time that happens, it will be too late to repair his relationship with others. Update 5. I didn't think I'd publish an update again after so long, but here I am. 3 years have passed, and many things have changed in my life. For example, I'm getting married soon. My fiancé and I have been together for the last 3 years. In fact, when I published my last update, I had already started dating him. We have been living together for the last year and a half, and he recently proposed to me. It's been a week since then, and a couple of days ago I announced it on all my social networks. Naturally, I was extremely happy, and many people congratulated me. And one of the people who contacted me after so long without hearing from him was my father. It was very strange, considering that we hadn't spoken in almost 4 years. Last year, I heard from some relatives that he and Veronica were going through a difficult period, and that, at that time, they were living apart. I also learned that he had developed a problem with alcohol, which, honestly, didn't surprise me. As I understand it, my grandfather also suffered from alcoholism in the later stages of his life, so it seems to be a family problem. For some reason, my father didn't used to drink much, but apparently this has changed recently. He congratulated me on my commitment, and in the spirit of new beginnings, I replied by thanking him. But that was it, I said no more. Then he wrote back, saying that he had been meaning to contact me for a long time. He confessed that for the last 4 years, he had only reflected on how right I was in everything I said to him. He admitted that he had been extremely selfish, and that he was now paying the consequences. He told me that he and Veronica had separated and were considering divorce. Naturally, he would have to pay her alimony, given that she hadn't worked for a long time. And although she didn't work by choice, he was still legally obliged to support her until she decided to get married again or gave up financial support for whatever reason. But until that happened, he was trapped in that financial obligation. He explained to me that the relationship between them had become very strained in recent years and that he could never really forgive her for what she did. But he couldn't forgive himself either, because over time he realized that it had all been his fault. However, by the time he finally understood his mistake, I had already cut off communication with him, and he felt too ashamed to try to contact me. He also revealed that he refused to adopt a child with Veronica because he felt that she was only trying to replace me. This triggered a big argument between them and was the main reason why they ended up separating. He concluded his message by congratulating me again and expressing his regret. He told me that this was the perfect opportunity to give me his blessing for my future and to ask for my forgiveness for everything that had happened. I'm not going to lie, I cried when I read that message. After all, he is my father. But even after reading all those messages, I preferred to reply with a simple thank you for the congratulations, and that was it. Could I forgive him and try to rebuild our relationship, especially now that Veronica is no longer around? Yes, I could. But the fact that he chose Veronica after what happened, considering how damaging it could have been for me, is something I can't easily forgive. Her petty revenge could have had much more serious consequences. If she had been clever enough to hide the handbag in my room, for example, I could have a criminal record, which would make it very difficult to find a job. And my father took her side? Well, that's a consequence he'll have to live with. I'll be glad if he finally gets divorced and manages to ensure that Veronica doesn't even receive alimony, but that will be the end of my relationship with him. I can anticipate some comments that will expect a happy ending where I resume communication with my father, but that will not be the case for me. Update 6. When we decided to get married, we knew that organizing a wedding would take time, but we didn't imagine it would be so much, even more complicated than a divorce process. So, my father's divorce came through before my wedding. I have been to weddings with 200 guests, which is 5 times bigger than mine, and I can't imagine everything that organizing them involved. They probably hired professionals for that, but in our case, we couldn't afford a wedding planner, so we did everything ourselves. Maybe that was our mistake, but we didn't want to invest thousands of dollars in a simple ceremony. Regarding the divorce, my father has definitively ended his relationship with Veronica. And in what could be considered positive news, he has avoided having to pay her alimony. This is because he used what she did to me as a legal ground for divorce. In this state, there is the option of divorce by fault, which is generally applied in cases of infidelity, something which, knowing Veronica, I would not be surprised if it had happened. But it also applies more broadly when it can be shown that one of the parties is responsible for the end of the marriage. In Veronica's case, her false accusation against me, which destroyed my relationship with my father and, ultimately, her marriage, was sufficient proof. I consider it positive because, if I had received a pension, I probably wouldn't need to work. But now I will have to, and with my criminal record, finding a good job won't be easy. I will have to work at something, but it is likely to be in less favorable conditions than I would have gotten without that record. I am aware that my father is experiencing the sadness of loneliness after having pushed everyone away from his life. Not only me, but also other family members, as I mentioned in a previous update. But that is the problem inherent in toxic relationships. They completely isolate you, and when they end, they leave you in absolute loneliness. This is probably my last update, because with Veronica out of the picture, I don't think I have much more to share. Addition. No, my father did not attend the wedding. I clarify this here because I have been asked numerous times. I can also add that Veronica has found a job in a factory, which is the little information I have been able to obtain about her.